Hey, Appleton East peeps, it's Mr. Kurth here to take you through ACT Reading Passage 1. So the materials you need is the 2018-2019 ACT practice test, and you're going to need to flip to pages 32 and 33. And the first thing you're going to want to do is read the passage and attempt the questions before watching the video. So I recommend to set a timer. 9 to 10 minutes would be good to get used to the pace. And once you're done attempting the passage, come back to the video. And in the video, we will briefly go over the passage and go through the questions and identify the type of question and the correct response for each question. So go ahead now and pause the video and then come back when you're done attempting the passage. Okay, so you should have gone through the passage by now. And some of the things you should have noticed about the passage, I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but just some of the highlights of it. So first off, the first thing you need to do when you get any type of reading is go to the source information. And we notice here it is a literary narrative with the title of Rough Water. And that should always already kind of give you an idea of what the passage might be about and the style of the passage. And it's from 2008, and our author is David McGlynn. So a few key details and information from the passage that I highlighted when I went through was that to identify who the author is, when he's telling the story. And he's a senior in high school, and it's a story about competing in swimming. And in the story, initially, he has a setback and he fails to qualify for the first race he attempts. And despite the setback, he decides to try another event. And then the narrative discusses the author's mindset and the importance of the race to himself. And he has this memory, and you need to kind of stay with the narrative because you might get confused, because in the middle of it, he has a memory back to several months earlier when he was training with his swim mates on the swim team. And they were doing some sort of activity where they tried to grab some sort of line, and they were running across a long cement deck, and they jump out over the water. And it was a very difficult thing to try to do. And he struggled. And then like on one of the final attempts he could possibly have, with some encouragement from one of his teammates, he was able to grab a hold of the line. And so it kind of shows just like through struggle and after digging deep, he's able to achieve that goal. And then he kind of goes on to go back and talk a bit about the importance of the race. So now he's back in the race as far as the narrative goes. And the importance of the race, it's not going to change anything in the outside of the world, but it's important to the race and to the author at that moment. And then finally, he gives it his all, and it talks a little bit about his quote, spasm of my tendons and the ache of my bones. And then the final passage is, quote, before I even turned to the clock or heard my coach scream that I had made it. So he had reached success after digging deep. So that's a little bit about the passage there, that some of the key details you should have gotten away from it. Now to go through the questions. And I'm just going to read through the question, the correct response, and then discuss what type of question that was. So the first question is, the narrative of the passage can be best described as a swimmer who primarily, we have A for this one, recalls the swim of his life and the factors that motivated him during the swim. And you can kind of see through that passage when he talks about how important it was to him and the action of digging deep and achieving that goal and everything. And this type of question is a craft and structure. Second question is, which of the following events mentioned in the passage happened first chronologically? The type of question, this one is a key idea and detail. And the answer is G. The narrative leapt out over the diving well in late September. So in this one, you need to kind of understand that he had gone back in time in the middle of the passage. And this is a tricky question because you might think it's one of the other ones, as he kind of covered them first in the passage. But then remember, halfway through the passage, he's tapping into a memory from several months earlier. Question number 3. This is a craft and structure question. The narrative describes the natatorium, and you need to understand what a natatorium is. That's just basically where the swimming pool is, as being nearly empty of spectators the day of his race in order to, and the answer for this one is A, illustrate that the perfect racing conditions the narrative have hoped for weren't likely to occur. All right, question 4 is the narrative indicates that when he swam the 1,000-yard freestyle in the time trials, the world for a moment seemed to, and this is kind of like his flashback area here, which our correct answer is J, slow down and allow him to reflect in real time. And he kind of discussed that in there too, and then he went into his memory. This type of question is a key idea in detail. Question number 5, the passage indicates that during the narrative swim at the time trial, he understood for the first time that C, the swim was an event that was important to him alone. And he discussed that later on towards the end of the passage when he says that, the world's not going to change. However, it is a big deal for him in that moment. And this type of question is a key idea in detail. We actually have a lot of key idea and detail questions in this passage. Number 6, based on the passage, the quote end the narrator mentions in line 80 most likely refers to his. So if you're responding to this one, you should definitely go back to line 80, kind of read not just the line itself, but also read a couple lines before and a couple lines after it to remember. And then our correct answer for this one is G, his last chance to qualify for junior nationals. And this refers to earlier too in the whole passage when he talks about like this being his last chance because his first attempt, he did not succeed. And so he's giving it one last go. And this type of question is a key idea in detail. Okay, question 7. The narrator of the passage characterized the time trial in Houston as, and the correct answer is D, an informal swim event put together at the last minute. You can find that information just directly right in the passage. He talks about that in the middle of the first paragraph. And this one's a little tricky because it's something you might not have highlighted after going through it. But if you could go back to kind of quickly breeze through the passage, especially the intro paragraph, you'd see it even says that like an informal, unadvertised event thrown together at the last minute. So that's a direct quote from the passage itself. And this type of question is another key idea in detail. So we had 4 of those types of questions in a row. All right, question 8. The statement, quote, that's where we're going, now hurry up, lines 35 to 36, can most directly be attributed to the, and you could, if you wanted to, if you had the time especially, go back and read those lines in particular, 35 and 36. You can find it right on the left-hand side. It tells you the line numbers. You might want to go a little bit before and maybe a little bit after to put those lines into context within the literary passage. What we're looking here for a correct answer is H, which is narrator as he speculates about what the cheering boy meant when the boy pointed at the pool. And that type of question, this is actually a different one. This is a craft and structure question. Question 9. For the narrator, compared to practicing in the outdoor pool, practicing in the indoor pool is, and this one's going to be C, less appealing. He doesn't actually say the words less appealing. What he does say, though, and we're looking at lines 47 and 48, after this day, we spend the rest of the season in the, quote, dank and moldy indoor pool. So if he's describing something that is dank and moldy, nothing, moldy is going to be appealing. So this is a key idea and detail. And again, it would be C, less appealing. All right, and our final question, question 10, another key idea and detailed. So we actually had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of the 10 questions were key idea and detail questions. And the question is, when the narrator heard, quote, jump in his mind while swimming, line 67, he was most likely remembering. So again, you could go back to line 67 and kind of put that jump into context. Our correct answer here is F. His teammates command the day the narrator caught the flag line, and he was finishing up his memory there, kind of putting that jump into context when he caught the line. So that's all the questions for this first passage. If you'd like to go on to the second passage, you should do the same thing. Read it beforehand, and then we'll jump into the explanation of the questions and the question types. If you like this video, make sure to click that like button and smash the subscribe for more great content.